as we have a state budget being considered, certain incentives for this and that. And again, the notion here, and we talk about this every year, of heat pumps, which is another way, if you want to pay the electricity and everything, to extract what heat is outside, push that in the house. They're not all cracked up to be, and a lot of people are waking up to this. I've always been fascinated with why this is being promoted when they cost and would need electricity that we don't have. And joining us right now is one of our friends, Chris Herb from the Connecticut Energy Marketers Association. He represents the hundreds and thousands of fine people who deal in heating oil and the such around the state. And Chris has been looking at some of the stuff in the budget and what's fair and what's not. Hey, Chris, it's Paul here. How are you, sir?
Paul, I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Now I know you've been looking at some of the stuff coming out of Hartford, kind of making sure that your industry and the folks you represent are fairly treated here. Anything you have seen that maybe a lot of folks wouldn't be able to find if it wasn't for guys like you who went and actually examined what our lawmakers are doing? What have you found?
Well, you know better than anyone that the devil's in the details, and they're going to be adjourning on June 4th, so we're heading down the stretch here, and there is a bill that is recently come out of the Finance Committee where they're going to be able to control the temperature of your home. They're going to be able to turn your air conditioning up when it gets hot out. You just mentioned that it's getting warmer out. Well, the government wants control of being able to control what the temperature inside your home is. And in the winter, they want to be able to turn your heat down in response to grid demand. So when there's not enough electricity, they want access. And this Senate Bill 1560 in Section 35 specifically does that. And frankly, it's concerning.
So, Chris, go into that a little bit. Somebody may have heard that and said, well, wait a minute. Are they going to have access to my thermostat, to my heating or cooling system? And I know that we're getting the smart technology and all that. Is that, Chris Herb, connected to this or not? Explain what the real fear is here.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another thing out there that is at play that is going to, I believe, dupe consumers, homeowners into installing the technologies that allow utilities and government to have access to the temperature of your house. Mm-hmm. So if there's $25 million that passed out of the appropriations budget. Yeah. And typically what happens is there's strings attached. When you install these, you have to install a smart thermostat and other smart technologies. And that's how they get access. So they lure you in with an incentive, a subsidy. And once you bite, they got the fish on the hook. And now, next thing you know, it's 96 degrees out, 85% humidity, and they're taking your air conditioning and they're turning it up to 78 in response. And if you think that I'm spinning out some sort of conspiracy, this has happened in Washington State, where the state of Washington, in response to an electric grid need, started to adjust the temperature of people's homes, and the person in the home couldn't override it.
So, Chris, and I know that I've seen some info out there regarding some folks, I think a couple of TV stations, Chris Herb, in Massachusetts have done some actual journalism and have interviewed people who went with more of the high-tech stuff, who were lured in to do heat pumps, even though, the progressives love heat pumps, even though there's not a lot of electricity to run them out there. And what did those TV stations found? Because I read those reports. I said, oh, look at this. What did they find?
Yeah, this is a blockbuster story. It came out late last week. The ABC affiliate out of Boston basically went and talked to people who took Massachusetts incentives to switch to heat pumps, only to learn that those incentives resulted in some cases, more than doubling the cost to heat your home in the winter. And as you know, this heat pump doesn't only produce heat, it also produces air conditioning. So these customers haven't even experienced the cost of electricity. One of our concerns is if Connecticut has the highest electric rates in the country, this Boston story is something that the governor should look closely at before he decides to sign any legislation that starts to dupe people into converting to heat pumps and incurring the outrageous electric costs that are associated with them.
So, Chris, what should people watch out for? Something online or something in their bill or something in their paper bill? If, in fact, this gets passed and then months down the road, what would they look for? What dupes people into doing this? Is this a pitch? Should they watch for the words heat pump? How is this pitched to people?
Yeah, I would say this. Use the good common sense your mother gave you. If it's too good to be true, then it's not a good deal. So if you're being offered substantial financial incentives to subsidize the cost of heat pumps, then look into the details. Will this allow the utility or the government or a third party to be able to adjust the temperature of my house in response to times when the grid is being overwhelmed